Hello, welcome to my studio. This is your instructor Linda, and this is video workshop number 7 on fringe quilling. I will also be covering in this video in more detail 2 techniques which I have touched briefly in my other videos, and that is blending and nestling. For those of you who are here from my Etsy website and only wish to learn how to use the connected fringe paper that I have listed there, then please skip directly to part 2 of this video, as that's where the relevant information to you would be. So let's begin this video by looking at this basic straight cut quilling strip. The basic straight cut quilling strip is characterized by 2 cuts that are parallel to each other, creating a long skinny quilling strip that is exactly the same thickness throughout. While this is the most common and most frequently used quilling strip, it is certainly not the only kind. A quilling strip that has at least one edge that is not straight and simple is collectively called a fringe strip or fringe paper. There are 3 different types or 3 major types of fringe paper. There is the straight fringe, the curved fringe, and the connected fringe. So let's begin by quilling the most simple type of fringe paper, which is the basic straight cut fringe strip. Now when you're working with fringe strips, there really is only one technique that you really need to know, and that is your basic tight coil. The difference between the straight cut fringe strip versus your basic straight cut quilling strip is the straight cut fringe strip has one edge that is straight and clean and one edge that is, well, not. The designs that can be on the side that is not straight is theoretically infinite, and there can be as many variations of straight cut fringe strips as there are people. So let's begin by rolling our basic straight cut fringe strip to make this little tuft here. So let's take a look at our fringe strip here. So we have one side that's kind of frilly and one side that's straight. So I'm going to first prep this strip by cutting off this thick non-cut end of the strip. That is the residual part of the strip that's left over from where it gripped my mat when I was cutting it on my Cricut. You can make your own fringe strips using a cutting machine like a Cricut or a Silhouette, or you can simply buy them. Okay, so let's begin by rolling this fringe strip. So on your needle, exactly like a tight coil. The fringe strip is a little bit harder to roll than your basic straight cut tight coil because you have an end that if you squeeze too hard, you're going to squish the element. So I usually hold it very gently on the base here and rotate my needle as such to get a tight coil. Like this. Okay, so now I'm going to glue down the tight coil. If you're not comfortable with using glue directly from the bottle, then go ahead and use the stylus. Okay, so we're going to close that strip. Now at this point, you can start spreading out these little frills in order to get this little tuft. Now, one of the tricks that I teach my beginners and some of my students is if you want to be able to spread out this tuft without having to worry about the center piece of your quilling element popping out and dislodging, then like I've got this one here that is still drying, I have glued the bottom part of the tight coil so that the pieces don't move. Okay, so actually, let's use this one to open it. So when you're using the tight coil in the fringe strip and you want to turn it into this tuft, most people intuitively want to push the quilling's element from the center out. Now the problem with doing that is when you do that, you are apt to squish the center of your flower and you will end up with a flat or squash center. So the best way actually to open up your tuft is to actually start by peeling away, like you would a banana peel, the edge strips, fringes on your quilling element. Going in a circle, slowly peeling it back. And then that way you don't get a squash center. Like this. Right. And slowly do it out. So once you get it to that point, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just kind of make a circle with my hand and kind of get the edges out. So here's your little tuft. Now you can also nestle the different quilling elements in order to create layers on your quilling elements by using, instead of a tight coil, by using ring coils. Now if you have a ring coil tool like this, you can make coils of different sizes, right? If you don't, you can simply use a dowel or some sort of cylindrical object that is the diameter that you need. Okay, so this fringe strip here, which kind of is grass-like, you roll pretty much the same way. But there is something that I am going to show you and make a note of, and in designs like this that have areas where the paper has a tendency to fold or kink, and flat areas like this, when you roll, frequently what you get is something like this. Now, when we're observing this versus this, you can see that in this one, the flat parts of the quilling element have stacked on top of each other and created neat stacked rows. What that means is that you end up with lots of these little gaps in between the quilling element that you kind of don't want. You want it to look more like this. So how do we achieve this instead of this when we're rolling? So let's take a look at this. What causes this stacking or layering of the quilling element as opposed to this staggering? What causes this is the flat areas in your fringe paper design. Because the flat area tends to fold in that area of weakness, when we go in a circle and the diameter is small, then the paper will tend to lodge against itself, kind of like a lock and key. And then you end up with this. So there are really two ways that you can avoid getting a stacking element like that. And that is, one, to increase the diameter of the tool that you're using so that these little flat areas are much smaller than the total diameter of your circle. Let me show you what I mean. So I just trimmed off the excess at the bottom of that I didn't want. So this quilling tool, which is the ring coil tool, is a 12mm diameter head that I'm using right now. And the 12mm diameter head is significantly larger in its circumference than the single piece in this frill. So if I quill with this, you can see that the different pieces are more likely to stagger because the diameter of the tool is larger than that. And here we go. So let's glue it down. I'm going to clamp this together with a quilling clamp. There we go. And if I spread this out from the center, there we go, nicely staggered. So what if you're trying to make a quilling element where you don't want that big circle in the middle? Say you want it tight. Then really the only way that you can get it to stagger is to wrap the quilling element tightly around the base of your needle so that each of these panels actually curve and wrap around your needle. Let me see if I can demonstrate here. I'm going to cut some of that. Okay. So here's your quilling needle. So if you put in your quilling needle and you turn, see how it has a tendency to fold kind of right there instead of around your needle? Well, what you want to do in this case is you want to put your thumb and forefinger on the needle and you want to squeeze and roll at the same time so that the quilling element wraps tightly around your needle. And those little panels will curve as you push them down because they are quite wide. And we push them down and turn. Okay. Go. Right. Nice and tight. This is where being a tight hander is an advantage. So let's glue that down. Okay. So if I pull it off the needle, you can kind of tell already that the pieces are staggered. Well, let me peel them back so you can see. There we go. So as you can see, I still got some overlapping in this, but certainly much better than that. It does take a little bit of practice to get it staggered like that. Sometimes I cheat. There's another way to do this as well too. Let's put that to the side. And that is to quill a little bit, cut it, like that, right? So then you quill a little bit and you cut it so that you end up with multiple layers like this. And when you have multiple layers and the ring coils are of different diameters at the bottom, then you can simply take it and nestle it and turn it so that these little points fill in the gaps. Okay? All right. So here we go. Here's some quilling elements that I've made before with different diameters on the bottom. And you can nestle them to get different colors and patterns. I'm just going to stick it onto this foliage, and you can create layered effects. This is why fringe quilling is also a type of 3D quilling or non-flat quilling. I have heard people who have referred to fringe quilling as 3D quilling. So let's put aside this straight cut fringe strip and let's go on to our curved cut fringe strip. Now many people who have done rolled flowers will probably recognize this curved cut fringe strip, right? It's surprising because a lot more people quill than they realize. Because when you're making one of these basic rolled flowers, you're actually quilling. So the curved cut fringe strips come in lots of different patterns as well. And the distinct feature of this curved strip is that the one straight edge, or the one clean edge, is actually in a spiral going towards the center. Now I have 3 different types of curved strips here. I have your basic one, and then I have ones with little frills on them, and I have one here that has lots of little frills. The more number of frills that you have on a curved quilling strip, the higher the level of difficulty it is to roll it, for exactly the same reason as it is harder to roll a grass strip with flat edges. Okay, so when you're rolling this curved fringe strip, this rolled flower, you want to start actually from the edge of the pattern. This little circle that you see on the inside of the pattern actually becomes the base of the flower. Okay, so let's try quilling one. You can quill with either your scrolling needle or with the standard needle. Either works. I'm going to scroll this one using a scrolling needle. Now, unlike the regular fringe strip, where we commonly, regular straight strip, where we commonly start at the edge of the strip, when you're rolling your curved fringe flower, I would actually start further into the strip, similar to how you would catch your strip if you're using the ultrafine quilling needle. And the reason you want to go further in from the edge is because that allows more paper to catch on your tool, and it's less likely to slodge or to fall off when you're rolling. So I'm going to begin by rolling. So when you're rolling this, what you want to do is you want to pay attention to make sure that the straight edge at the bottom here aligns perfectly, like you would in a straight strip. Now, because the cut is different on one side of the strip versus the other side of the strip, you won't get a perfect alignment on both sides like you would with a straight cut strip. So more or less ignore how this side aligns and align it to the inside or the straight edge of your strip there. So I'm going to turn this. And the reason why a design like this is the easiest to roll is because there are no areas of weakness or breaks that allow for the pieces of the rolled strip to stack and align and to end up with parallel as opposed to the staggered. So sometimes I find that once you get to the end of your round curved quill strip that it is hard to get it aligned on the needle, and sometimes it falls off. If it does, that is fine. Just finish rolling it with your hands. So once you get to the end and you have this little piece here, what you want to do is you want to fold it back and kind of out of the way. And the reason you want to do that is you want to be able to get into this ring area here in order to crimp it. So when we're rolling this, you can see here that I have some up and downs in the level of my paper. And unless you're really skilled at doing rolled flowers, this is pretty common. As long as you don't get too much up and down, I find most of the time the flower turns out all right. Okay? If you find that your strip is really wandering and it's really quite unlevel, then what you can do is you can release the flower a little bit and kind of push it so that the level of the paper is more parallel. But in this case, I'm fairly satisfied with that. So once we have the rolled flower kind of in this position, you don't want to release it right away, because when you release it right away, what will happen is that the flower will pop open quite wide and quite loose. So what you want to do is you want to pinch the bottom of this quilling element here in a circle like that. And the harder that you pinch and the more times you pinch, the tighter the flower will be, or the less it will release when you let it go. If you want your flower to be a little bit more full, then ease up on the pinching. And if you want it to be quite tight and bud-like, then pinch a little bit harder. Okay, so I've pinched around in a circle. I'm going to turn around and let the flower release. Pat, pat, pat. Okay, that's pretty nice. So you can let the flower relax to the size that you want, and then once it is the size that you want, you just grab it. And you see these little rings at the bottom there? What you need to do is you need to glue these rings so that they don't move. Because if they move, then what will happen is as your flower sits there and relaxes, that you are going to get a flower that is unraveling. So here I am, I'm gluing it and I'm making sure that I get every single ring. And this is one of the few occasions in quilling where you can put a ton of glue on it and it probably wouldn't make much of a difference. Okay, so I'm going to put the bottom on that. And if you're really impatient and you want this to go really quickly, then you can use what most people use on these rolled flowers is you can use a glue gun, and then you have instant adhesion. Okay, so here we go. That's pretty, isn't it? Kind of looks like a succulent to me. Okay, so I'm going to go on to do some of the more difficult patterns as well too. But I'm going to draw your attention to these two flowers that I made prior to the video because I wanted to show you again what I meant by stacking. So if you take a look at this flower on the left-hand side, you can see that the different petals have stacked with each other so that they are exactly in the same spot. So then you get patches where you get lots of petals that are stacked together like a lump, and areas where it looks kind of square and empty. So on this flower here, when I had curled it, I had pushed down and curled on the edge just like I did when I did the straight fringe paper. And when I did that, then you can see when it unraveled, then I get more staggering of the flower. So in this design here, once you finish, this is pretty much how it looks. However, with a design like this where there are little petals, after you're actually done rolling it, you can actually go around in a circle and bend these petals down to get more of a full-looking flower, like such. See? Like that. Right? And you can keep going till you finish all the way to the center of your flower. Now this one I haven't rolled all the way yet, so you can see it's only partially opened, right? And there we go. And like the other one, for this one you can grab your straight cut fringe paper where you've made the foliage, and you can stack them together to get a pieced together design. Okay, so I'm going to finish part one of the workshop here, and I'm going to continue on part two where we will be working with the connected fringe.